Hi everyone, welcome to the first countdown webinar of this financial year, FY22, and thanks everyone for joining. Really excited tonight to be introducing you all to the new and updated Mastitis Focus Report, which has been a really significant body of work for Dr. Allison Gunn and the team at Datagene to pull together a series of upgrades. So really excited to share with you the report tonight. So just some housekeeping. So we are using Zoom tonight. If you do have any questions, I'll be keeping you all on mute. But if you do have any questions, do feel free to pop them in the chat, and we will address them as each of the speakers finishes up. So the format for tonight's session, we're first going to hear from Erica Oakes from Datagene, who's going to introduce us to Datavat, which is the platform that will be hosting the new Mastitis Focus Report. And then, as I said, Dr. Allison Gunn will be running us through the details of what you can find in a Mastitis Focus Report, how you can use it, and some of the key upgrades. So should be a fairly enjoyable session. As I said, please don't hesitate to ask any questions if they pop up. We are recording tonight's session, so if you would, if you need to pop off or if you want to share it with any of your colleagues, I will be sending out the link after the webinar, and I'll also pop it on the Dairy Australia website under the MFR section. So without further ado, I will introduce Erica, and I'm just checking, there are a couple of people still in the waiting room who have just admitted. So Erica Oakes is the project manager for IT at Datagene, and she's well known to most of you that have been through the Countdown program. So Erica's focus really is on turning farm and industry data into tools that are useful for farmers and advisors. She grew up milking cows on her parents' dairy farm in northern Victoria, and she's got a Bachelor of Science in Botany and Ecology from the University of Melbourne. Erica's got significant experience in a range of industries, including bushfire and emergency management, having worked on the 2009 Black Saturday bushfires. Erica chose to make the move back to agriculture as the Project Development Manager in Animal Health and Welfare at Dairy Australia. And as I said, she was working really closely with many of you on the Countdown program, but also in CAF, and she was really instrumental in pulling together the Healthy Hooves program. After 4 years at DA, Erica jumped ship over to Datagene, and she implements, or during her time at Datagene, has implemented the Improving Herds and Gymfo projects, and now focuses almost solely on delivering IT projects for Datagene. So Erica, I might hand over to you.
Thanks, Steph. Okay, so I'm going to start by sharing my screen. So here's hoping that this works. Be embarrassing if it doesn't. Okay. Oh, move this all over to there. Okay. So tonight I'm mainly going to focus on access to Datavat and how you guys can get access to Datavat. So I'm not sure how many of you are aware of Datavat and what you can do within the platform. But it's an industry portal that sits over the top of the Central Data Repository, or the CDR. And the CDR contains sort of industry information, industry data coming from many different sources. So we've got on-farm data, we've got herd testing information, we've got gone blank. Breed society data. There's a heap of data that comes into CDR, and it can be used in different ways. So traditionally we've been known for genetic evaluation, but over the past couple of years, we've really shifted into more data and data management. So genetic evaluation is still very core to the business, but so is data management and building reports. So I think that most of you guys will have been sent a login from Steph. If you haven't, she can send them out to you guys. And if you're still having trouble logging in, you can call Datagene's support hotline and we can help you out. So up here you guys can see Datavat. So if you don't have an account and you haven't been sent those details, you can click this button up here at the top that says sign up. And then when we go into it, you need to go to I'm a service provider, and then fill all your details out and hit accept and register your account. And then you'll be sent through an email. Now, when it comes down to your party, that is essentially your business name. So you can just start typing something in. So for instance, Dairy Australia, and then it will pull up the business names that are already loaded into the system. So you can click on that and away you go. So I'm not actually going to register an account because we have an account. So what we do next is we head up to the top right where it says login, and you get taken to this screen. Put your details in. If you forget your password, you can drop into forgot password and you can reset that password. But essentially we just log in. Okay, so what happens next is you're given a party to select. So for me, I've got a couple of different business names so that I can log in as different people to have a look at different things. But for tonight, I'm going to click on DataGene because that's my core business that I'm working with. So depending on what you have as part of your profile will depend what you can see across the top here. So because I've got DataGene stuff, I can see a few different things that doesn't come with the standard suite. But in under animal search, you can look up breeding values. Reports and tools is mainly where you guys are going to want to be. And Allison will go through this a little bit later. ABV lists, so breeding value lists. Herd platform, which is a herd test center platform. And this one's the DataGene. So what I'm going to do now is go through how to. So one of the good things about Datavat is that you can get access to your client's data and your client's reports. So if you're working with a specific farmer and you want to see their reports, you can request access to their data and reports. So the way to do that is to hover over here and come down to authorizations. So we click on that. And then we get taken to this screen. So both farmers, so everyone has access to this, this section of Datavat. So whether you are a farmer and you own that herd's information, you can add authorization. So this is the farmer giving you guys access to their information. So they can do that. They just have to put in their herd ID, your email address, and then they can either decide to give you access for a short period of time, or it can be for as long as you want. So they can do that. So say if we wanted to give it just for a week or 2 weeks, we can click on that and then they'll submit that. And they can revoke that access at any time as well. So they can grant you access and they can revoke their access because they're the owner of the data. But what you guys are probably more interested in is requesting authorization from farmers rather than getting them to give it to you. You can preempt them. So you can go into request authorization. And what you need to be able to do is to put in your, put in the farmer that you want to use. You need to put in their herd ID, whether it's the Shire herd ID, so or their national herd ID if you know it, and the owner's email address. And then you click submit and it will send an email to the farmer and they can then go through that process and approve that. And so that's how you guys can get access to different reports within Datavat from farmers. Do I have any questions?
None so far in the chat, but that's probably a great opportunity, to, Eric, just to remind everyone, if you do have any questions as the presentations go on, do feel free to pop them in the chat or while we're just paused, if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask a question.
And I'll just say, if you are having any trouble with any of this or signing in, you can go up to the contact and support up here, and you can either call the number if it's within business hours, or pop a query in here. I would suggest calling the number. You'll probably get a quicker response, but only during business hours.
No questions, Erica.
Great. All right. Well, I think that's all I was going to go over. So I suppose I'll hand back to you, Steph.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Erica. So as Erica said, I do have login details so I will have sent out about 3/4 of your login details. We just found a little hiccup on the quick guide, that PDF that's just being rectified at the moment, and then I'll send out the rest of your login details. So everyone that's registered as a Countdown advisor will have a login details, and those additional or those of you who are on the webinar tonight who would like login details, we can organise them for you as well. Otherwise, as Erica said, there is the sign up button that you can go in and set up your own account. So if nobody's got any questions, and I can't see any in the chat, I will introduce Allison now. So Dr. Allison Gunn is a vet who's worked in both Australia's beef and dairy industry for over 30 years. She runs a veterinary clinical and consultancy business, Herd Solutions, based in East Gippsland. Allison has been a really key member of the Dairy Australia both Countdown and NCAF team, and has contributed to many of our projects, including leading the development for Countdown MQ. Most recently, she's collaborated with Datagene and DA to redesign and test the Mastitis focus report. So Allison has really been really integral to rebuilding the Mastitis focus report, and we're really proud of the new report and what it can do. So really looking forward to hearing Allison's presentation tonight, and hope you guys are all as excited about the new report as we are. Over to you, Ali.
Okay, thanks, Steph. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, sure can.
Just sharing screen. I've just got to go through that thing again and making sure I share the right screen. I think that's the right one. Yes, that is. Okay, beaut. Okay, so this, as Steph said, has been a while coming, but I'm pretty happy to be talking about this Mastitis focus upgrade. It started a few years back now when a number of people had suggested some improvements, and we thought that Dairy Australia approached me, and I talked to a few people about what we could do to make the existing Mastitis focus report better. I know that some of the people I talked to are in this room, so I'm hoping it's going to meet expectations. Right, so let's just see. It's just refusing to move slides here. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to cover tonight is why was it changed, how to run a Mastitis focus report, following on from Erica's introduction to Datavat. What is new? I know a lot of you in the room. It's really good to see familiar faces that I haven't seen for ages, thanks to COVID. And I know a lot of you know the Mastitis report very well, so I'm hoping I'm not going to bore you all with, I'll just do a little quick overview of the major features, and we'll mainly focus on what is new. There's a few features we put in to help interpret the Mastitis focus report for farmers, and then I will briefly touch on the additional resources at the end of the presentation. So why do we change it? Well, we want to make it easier to obtain. It wasn't getting used very much. It got used a lot during MQ, but it wasn't getting used that well. We wanted to improve the usability of it, update the programming because there were some issues that needed addressing, and to try and increase the functionality. So first of all, making it more accessible, particularly for farmers, means it's gone to Datavat, which is where a lot of farmers have their information anyhow. They can get a whole heap of other reports. So the Mastitis focus report is just one of that suite. It also works with more files. It doesn't work with different files, but if a herd management program put out a glitchy a diff file, which is the main file that we used to import into the old, or we still import in the new Datavat, but we don't have to do it that way. If there was a glitchy diff file, it was very sensitive and would chuck it out. And so I could actually get that diff file into a different program and then run an MFR from there. But now it works brilliantly. I haven't had hardly a failed file. And also, if it does fail, it's got much better explanations on the website as to why your file isn't working. There's still support if you put a file up and it doesn't work, but I think you're going to find it a lot easier. I know there's people here that have had a few files that don't work. I think you're going to find those files are a lot smoother. It also uses the information. So again, this isn't a diff file issue so much as the way that some of the herd management programs put information into diff files. So they not all programs put information into their dry off information and treatment information in quite the standard way. But Datagene have worked really hard to actually improve finding that information in the diff files and dragging it out. So files that I ran an MFR on the original Mastitis Focus Report website, when I run it on the new Datavat website, I'm getting a much better report out of it. Oh, wrong way. And it no longer requires a 101 file. So, some of the herd management programs don't export a 101 file, and a 101 file is a diff file. It's a really simple file. It literally just has the farmer's name and address in it. But there's one particular management system that doesn't have that as an option to export, which meant that people couldn't actually run a Mastitis Focus Report unless I created them a 101 file. So now if you don't have a 101 file in your information, or you're uploading as a CSV, which I'll talk about later, you just need to name one of the files in your zip file with the farmer's name, so Joe Bloggs Mafra, and that will then show up on as the title on the Mastitis Focus Report, as long as it is the longest file name in that zip file. And as I just mentioned, and again, very exciting, we can now upload data as a CSV file, so you're not limited to what the farmer has on herd recording. Okay, so improving the usability. We've made the Mastitis Focus Report a bit bigger. We've moved the data quality information to the front page, and then put the key mastitis parameters, expanded those a little and put them at the bottom. So front and center is not only some important mastitis information, but feedback to the farmer about, was the information that went in, the data they provided, good or not, and if it's not good, how has that limited the information they're receiving? And so, as I said, this is basically putting the increased emphasis on data quality. We've changed the symbols. The old Mastitis report, you may remember, had stars, and that confused a lot of people. So now we've gone to traffic lights to give feedback to the farmers as to whether their parameters we're measuring are good or not good. And if they don't have enough records, that is clearly flagged as well. And we've put the farm data box. So on the old report, it used to have all the information, all the output on the front page, and on the back, it had all the workings. That meant that a lot of people never turned the page over. And so even if half the information they needed wasn't in there, they didn't really know it and they didn't look at it. We've moved the farm data box right to the top of that page so that people can actually look at it and say, does this represent my herd? And if you're as an advisor or going up talking to farmers, it's really key that that information is checked off, particularly if you're going to import it as a CSV. Because I think that's the thing that's most going to be hardest to get right and really important. It's critically right the information is correct going in, otherwise all the calculations don't work. And we've also introduced, I'm not sure if you can see, and I'll talk more about them later. I can't see my own mouse, so you probably can't. These little ABC, these little coloured circles down the bottom to aid in interpretation of the report. And I'll talk more about that later. So briefly on the programming, one of the reasons for changing programming is that a lot of farms are only herd recording, say, 4 times a year, fewer numbers of herd recordings per year. And so one of the things that was changed was that cows now become uninfected after 3 clean tests, not 4, just to try and actually account for those fewer herd recordings. We also expanded the range that produces the amber warning, the old 3-star warning, because it was really narrow and it was actually very uncommon to see that 3-star now amber warning. And so we haven't changed the green at all, but we have made that amber area a little bit bigger for quite a few of the parameters. Not a lot, but it's now probably more likely you're going to see an amber warning. And the other thing we did was that it will now, if there's missing information in a box and that traffic light applies to more than one thing in the box, if that information is missing, it'll ignore it. So that if there's a traffic light there, it applies the information that is in that box. And if one thing is out of the parameter, it will reflect the worst thing. Whereas before, if one of the parameters wasn't there, it just didn't give you anything. We changed the calculation for cows infected in multiple lactations. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And there were some other minor programming errors that we changed as well. Okay, so how to run an MFR? Well, there's now three options actually to obtain your data. The first is your farmer has given you access to the Datavat account. So you log in, like Erica showed you, request access. If they've got information in Datavat, it's going to be really simple to get an MFR. Or you can obtain an ADHIS diff file from your herd recording or a herd management program, exactly like you have done previously. If you're requesting it from herd recording, important to remember that you need to include all cows for 3 years if possible, and not just the current cows. You need everything that's been culled. And if you're exporting it from a dairy program, you must be able to have a 102 and 103 file, because they can contain the cow information and the calving dates, etc. And then unless you're uploading a CSV, you want either or both of a 104 file, which has got herd test information, or a 116 file, which has got treatment information. My rule, when people ask me, is I just say tick all the boxes and then you should have what you want. But those are the key things you need. And finally, as we said, you can also upload a CSV, and you can either upload that as a standalone file with all the herd information, or in combination with the diff file. And the latter is where I think the real benefit is, because a lot of farmers might herd record, but they don't have their clinical mastitis data on herd recording. So if you can obtain that off their management system or enter it into Excel, you can then upload it. The important thing to remember is that if you're combining information, all the files have to be uploaded as one single zip file into Datavat. So put it all together, name one of those files with the farmer name if you haven't already got that, and then upload it. Okay, so once you get into Datavat, and I'll give you a live demonstration, assuming it works in a minute, you've got 3 options for your reporting analysis. You can do the standard report, which is basically just press go, and that will do a report from the day you run it. And it will include all the cows. You can do a retrospective report, so you can pick dates going way back into the past if the data's there. Or you can select a calving range. So this is really useful for split calving herds. If you want to look at how their spring calvers compared to the autumn calvers, you can just look at cows calving in those dates, and it will only pull out the information relevant for the cows that calved in those dates. One thing to, minor technicality or whatever, is the report is for the 11 full months before the input date and the part of the month specified by the input date. So in this report here from Gerald Farmer, which those of you that have done MQ may remember, the report period started on the 20th of September 2016. But the way the analysis works, it looks at all the calendar months. So it doesn't go back to the 20th of the 9th, 15, it goes back to the 1st of the 10th. And it will look at all those 11 months and then that part month up to the date you put it in. So if you did want to look at a full 12-month period retrospectively, then the option that you can then put the 30th or 31st of the month. But that's just how it's been set up from the beginning, and it's basic because all the programming works on calendar months. Okay, so here is the Datavat website, and if I'm lucky, we can now, can we see that still?
Yep, we can, Ali.
Sharing that screen. So this is now going live. Okay, so I've already logged in, and I can either select a herd, and if I had some herds in there, which I don't at the moment, I'd be able to arrow down and pick the herd I wanted, or I can upload a zip file. So I go to choose file, and this is Gerald Farmer again, and we just put him in. Now, we've got 3 options, I said, for a report analysis. We can always run it from today. Well, that information is not that current, so that won't work. Here's where you put your cow starting and the calving range ends. That's the only place you put 2 dates in. For everything else, you just put the last date. So for Gerald Farmer, it's actually easiest, I reckon, to change the year first. You go to, say, 2016. I'm going to go to the 31st of August and click on that date and press preview. And it should show up in a minute, and you can then either email it to yourself or you can download it. There it is. Okay, so pretty simple. You've got it there. If you put the wrong information in, it will come up with an error that will be it should tell you. I've had people like put completely the wrong information into the zip file, so it will tell you what it's missing, basically. So that's how that works. So let's have a little bit more of a look at the new report. Come on, go to slideshow. Okay, right.
Yep, good here, Ali.
Good there, good. Okay. So before we look at the new report, actually, we'll talk about importing a CSV file, because that's probably the thing that is most important to get right. So what you need to do is export a report or multiple reports. So this is a mastitis report from Easy Dairy, but export a report. So in Easy Dairy, you do to print to CSV as a CSV or an Excel, and a lot of the management programs allow you to do that. Or you could enter data into Excel from farm records. And I know on the line, I've got one person that's absolutely awesome at doing that for the farmers around here, mention no names. So you can get it done that way as well. So as I said, the most reliable way of getting this report, I reckon, is adding your clinical mastitis data into a herd that's already herd recording. But if you decide you want to enter the whole herd, it's essential to have a range of information, which is all the cows' information. So if they're milking, if they're dry, all the cows milking dry, dead or cold for the last at least 2 years, all their calving dates. If a cow doesn't have a calving date, it won't go, or any other information won't be accepted. All their dry off dates, all their culling dates, and birth dates or age is also useful if you want to look at heifer performance. So if you haven't got the whole information, then it's not going to give you a report that means anything at all. You need to then combine all that information, which will often come in multiple reports, and save it in an Excel file, and then save that Excel file as a CSV with just one sheet in it. So for those of you that use dairy data, you'd recognize this way of importing, but the column title contains these header strings. And so, for instance, the cow information must either have the word cow or ID. The calving date must have the header calv, C-A-L-V, within it. Dry off date must have dry. So you can see over on the left-hand side, one I've already set up to do. Little tip there, I've got the calving dates first. And the reason for that is it needs to find the calving date before it finds the dry off date, else it doesn't figure out that there's a lactation there. Now, there's a bit of information in this section, but I will tell you it's very clearly laid out in the user guide on pages 8 and 9. So if you want to go and do a CSV, import a CSV file, grab out your user guide and start with that and make sure you get it right. There are a few important things to remember. So if you want to combine a CSV file with an ADHIS diff, you need to have the cow ID as either the cow herd recording number or its national cow ID. Otherwise, the mastitis focus report isn't going to be able to put the two cows together in the combined file. If you're not using a diff file, then you can use any number or letter. So it doesn't have to be numerical up to 6 characters. So you can use Daisy and Mary if you want. As I said earlier, if there's no calving date, it won't accept any other information. And your calving dates need to be on the same line or earlier as a dry off date. And if you don't have the details, so often when you go to do enter mastitis information, you can use, there's a code for every drug. However, that's not going to get used in the MFR. So the simple way of doing it is to use these codes, which is DCT for dry cow treatment, TS for teat seal, MCT for clinical treated, etc. So you can use those and just then you don't need to put in which drug it used, okay? So as I said, it's a little bit complex, but it does work really well. And it's just a question of reading through that user guide before you go to do it. Okay, now let's get on to the mastitis focus report. So when you run one of these, you should end up with 4 pages, possibly more, depending on how many cows they've got to consider culling, which will partly depend on the size of the herd. And so the front page I've talked about, the second page will look familiar, the third page is a bit of a rehash of the previous back page, and let's go through those in more detail. So what are the key changes? Well, as I said before, one of the key changes is to a bigger focus on data quality. And so not only are there tick boxes that shows what is actually in there, but also there's a section below that that explains why that missing data is important and what won't be in your report because that information is there. And there's about 12 different error messages you can get there. Then below that is what we've called the key parameters impacting profitability. A lot of these were on the previous report. We've just moved them around. A new one is it takes the cost of mastitis, takes the number of cases in that herd and actually calculate the cost of mastitis year report. And then below that, so the top bit has got clinical case rates and the lower section has got new infection rates. And then we've got failure to cure over the dry. So these are just one page, quick snapshot, what's going on in this herd. Then on page 2, as I said, the farm data box has moved to the top, which should allow people to really have a look at that farm data box and make sure the numbers there make sense. And your calving system, so this is another improving functionality that works really well. We've now split out the first calvers from the mature cows because many herds will manage them as 2 separate groups. And so if they've got clinical mastitis at calving, we can see which group of animals it's in. The other thing that's been changed is that the y-axis is changed. So now it goes up to 20 cows before it stopped at 10 to allow for those bigger herds. And then below that, this is the old mastitis focus report that many of you will be familiar with. So you've got your clinical case information at the top. Under the clinical mastitis during lactation, you've also got treatment failure. And that is all cases that have 3 or more days of treatment in a 10-day period. So for that, the farmer needs to record every treatment, more than 3 cases, not 3 or more than 3 cases. So that is going to pick up people are either treating for longer than what is recommended on the label, or the case isn't curing and they're coming back to treat again. And so your triggers there. I did pick a herd that had a bit of a problem, so it looks pretty dramatic, but a lot of herds doesn't have that sort of information, but you can only get that information if the farmer is actually recording every single treatment, not just the fact the cow had mastitis. Below that, you've got your spread of infection. So that's looking at the change of infected cows between herd recordings. And so if they haven't herd recorded for a while, you'll notice that between February and May, it's all the same level. That's because there probably wasn't a herd recording. There was only one herd recording in there. So it just shows the change between herd recordings. And then next to it is your previous dry off strategies. So you can evaluate how successful dry off was in that herd. And
Ellie,
then, yep.
We've just got a question from Craig Wood. Sorry to interrupt. Just before we move off the clinical mastitis box, what happens if a product's registered for a longer duration?
If it's registered for a longer duration than 3 treatments, I'm not aware of any products that's not registered for currently registered for more than 3 days. But if it is, and you know the herd, then you can probably say that's why it's there, I guess.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's great. He's just popped in the chat ultra clocks. So yeah, your advice, Ali, is that you just know what if that number is higher, that you just need to disregard it for that.
I'm guessing it is. Yep. Yep. So maybe we could have looked at longer, but most of them are only 1 or 2 days, I guess. So I think it's just a question of adapting. Can't quite get that. Yep.
Thanks, Craig, for letting us know. We'll take that offline and double check.
Yes. Me too. So previous dry off strategies, as I said, a lot of you have seen this before. Nothing has really changed. And then the bit and then plan your next dry off for now is exactly the same as it was before. And it's just basically giving the farmer some direction as to what they would do with drying off and referring them to go and talk to their vet. So the bit that has changed slightly is cows infected in multiple lactations. So the cows prone to clinical mastitis is still the same, but in this box. So this box basically is giving the farmer feedback on how good his culling is. But we weren't finding many farmers with information or data coming up in cows infected over multiple lactations. So we changed it so it really flags more the cows they should be thinking of culling. And so it was the number of cows infected over 3 consecutive lactations despite intervening dry cow. And now it's changed to cows with 2 or more herd recording events in both the current and previous lactations. Or if there are not 2 herd recordings in the current lactation, we'll go back and look at the previous 2 lactations, and it excludes herd recordings that are more than 14 days post-calving. And then on page 3, this has the boxes, for those of you not familiar with Mastitis Focus Report, the boxes at the top basically take the actual numbers, and you can go in and actually look at the numbers that generated the information on the preceding 2 pages. Below that, there's a little box. So if they've got a lot of quality feedback from the front page, there may be some more feedback in this box here. If there's a lot of information missing, I think we restrict it to 5 or 6 error messages on the front page. So because we don't want to overwhelm them. So we've moved, some will go to the back if they have a lot of error messages. And then below this is a little area for notes. You can actually hand it to the farmer with some key points. Adjacent to that is a little area I really like, and it's there to help approve, to relate that report to areas of mastitis control. So all of you will be familiar with the clean cows, mastitis cows diagram. And so it's taking that diagram, and you will have noticed all throughout the report there was little circles, little blue A's, little pink B's, etc. And so you can actually turn around and take this and go through with the farmer all those areas and actually look at them one by one. So how are the first calvers performing? How many new infections are there? How about new infections in all cows, etc.? Clinical cases. So, and it gives some pointers there as to what they might need to look at if those areas aren't as good as they would like. So you can then take that concept, and for those of you that did MQ will remember a little exercise where we got out the coloured pens, and you can then go and find all your little blue circles relating to heifers and say, right, where are all the areas on heifers? So to make it easier, rather than trying to remember where they are, find all the areas with the little blue A's on the report, and they're all the areas relating to the heifers. Similarly, with clinical cases, find all the little yellow C's, get your highlighter out and talk to them about what's happening with clinical cases on their farm and how they might control, use that information to control mastitis or improve milk quality. Okay, last page. So on the last page, Richard Shepherd did a really neat bit of work, a bit of data analysis, where he calculated out the likelihood of cows becoming infected in the next lactation. So this is based on age as well as current elevated cell count or previous elevated cell count, and it's ranked. And so priority 1, which there aren't any of in this example, is 90% or more likelihood, and this is only a likelihood, it's only a chance. It needs to be explained to farmers. This isn't definite, but it's 90% or more likely that she's going to remain a high cell count cow. Priority 2 is 80% or more likely to, and priority 3 is 70% or more likely to. And we've cut it off so that it's only got, if they've got lots and lots and lots of them, I think it reports on the top 15% of the herd or something like that. So it's not an indefinite list. I have seen it run over 3 pages on a bigger herd, but on most herds, it's actually not a huge number. But that's really for those farmers to go away and say, right, you know, these are the cows we need to have a better look at when we come to doing our culling this year. So that's all I've got to say about the mastitis focus report itself. Obviously happy to take questions, and then to support them, there's the quick guide, which basically goes through all those things I've pointed out and a few more, and the user guide, which is about a 20-page, pretty comprehensive document based on the original user guide put together by Rod and others, but we've added in obviously all the information on the new report. So thanks, Steph. That's me done.
Awesome. Thanks, Ali. So we've just got a question in the chat from Steve Jago. So how does the MFR cope with intramammary plus intramuscular injections concurrently as a mastitis treatment?
It would just count them as a single treatment. So if it looks at the treatments on a day, not the number of treatments. So it's basically how many days has this cow been treated within a 10-day period.
Fantastic. Does that answer your question, Steve? Are you happy with that?
Do you want me to stop sharing, Steph, or shall I keep it up in case I need to flick back?
No, let's unshare.
If we can. We had this problem earlier. And I think I can this time. Oh, I've got new share. No.
That's all right.
No, we're not. We'll just keep it there.
We'll keep it there. That sounds good. Did anyone else have any questions or comments? Feel free to pop it into the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself.
Nobody?
Looks good. You've done such a comprehensive job, Ali, that no one's got any questions. So I think probably the critical thing is to, as I said, I'll continue sending out the updated, I'll continue sending out your login details once I've just made those quick tweaks to the quick guide, which you've got on the screen in front of you. I just need to, fix that before I send out any more logins. So you should have new logins over the next week or two. And if you haven't received an email, if you're not a current Countdown advisor, just let me know. As I said, anyone that's not a current Countdown advisor but's on the webinar, I will set you up with login details, or else you can set up your own login, but as Erica showed you by just hitting the sign up button. Erica has offered to show the Ellenbank herd, running it from data directly from the central data repository. So I'm wondering, Erica, just while we're waiting for questions, did you want to just show how you can run a report with data that's already on the system?
Yeah, no worries.
Well,
I think I can overshare from.
Yeah, try and share over me.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on,
Yep.
I've got stop share now. There you go.
Yeah.
There's another question there too, Erica, while you're getting it up if you want.
Yeah, do you want to answer that, Ali, just while Erica's getting the screen up?
Yeah, I was wondering who the silly cousins were, Mitch. So, it's if you can, if you can export as a CSV or an Excel spreadsheet, you can do it from anything. I've not tried to do it from DC 305, but if you can't export as a CSV or Excel spreadsheet, then I think you're going to struggle. But I think that you probably could from DC 305. It would just be a question of being confident that you've got all the information you want and all those cows, including the culled cows and everything in there, and then have a really good look at the farm data box and saying, is this the herd that I'm looking at?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Probably a second part of your question, Mitch, is you can run an MFR for herds that aren't currently herd recording. If you've got clinical mastitis treatment records, obviously you'll miss all the boxes that provide sort of new infection rates that relate to herd recording data, but certainly in terms of getting some analysis on clinical records, you can still run them. So I'm just, Ali, we've got a couple of questions just popping through. Erica, is that okay if I just address these questions and then we do the demo?
Yep.
So Allison, Dario's just asked, he said, I'm still getting a difference between cows milked and cows herd tested when all milkers are being herd tested on 2 farms. I have run the report on how can I fix this?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you asked that, Dario, because I forgot. And I tell you what, I pulled my hair out, as Erica and Steph will tell you, trying to get this right. And I'm fairly certain it is actually now right. But why it will vary is that one is looking at the number of cows milked throughout the month, whereas the number of herd recorded cows will just be on the day of herd recording. So there can be some vast differences at the beginning or the end of calving. There will also be a small number of cows that get excluded because they didn't have the right, like they might have had a 2-litre herd recording or a cell count that was well out of whack. So if there will always be, or often be, a few cows that are excluded from the herd recording data, even when they're herd recorded, because the information that comes out at the end actually doesn't make sense. They knock them out. And I tell you, I have gone through these and multiple times, and I'm fairly confident now that generally it's a very small discrepancy and you can relate it to, and I've tested quite a few files and I can go through and I can explain why those cows weren't there. They either weren't there on herd recording day, or they might have had antibiotic treatment, or there's a whole heap of reasons, but basically I'm fairly confident it's very close to right, if not correct.
Yeah, that's awesome, Alison. And yeah, certainly can attest to the frustration and amount of effort to try and get that right. So Alison, just to confirm, is it worth Dario potentially rerunning those reports and just see how they go on the most recent version?
I'm very, if anyone's got anything they think isn't working, just send it through to me. If you haven't got my email address, send it through to Steph and she'll send it to me. Let's just, I'm happy to have a look at something if you think it's not right, or if something's not working. We are still providing support, aren't we, Steph? So this should be correct, and we want to know if it's not.
Yeah, so that's right. So we didn't mention, but there is a countdown at dairyaustralia.com.au, which goes to both Alison and I. So if Alison doesn't see it, I'll see it. So countdown at dairyaustralia.com.au. If you've got any technical questions on your data, if you've got issues sort of accessing Datavat and logging in, obviously that will go to the Datavat help desk. But for any kind of technical issues where you're not quite sure why you've got missing data or things like that, yeah, that countdown at Dairy Australia email address. So a question from Luke Morrison: if uploading files, do they remain in the system for future access, or do you need to reload?
No, you need to reload them.
Yeah, thank you.
Sometimes I don't quite know, sometimes you can get more than one date out of the same report, but generally you have to reload it.
Yeah, thanks, Ellie. Okay, question from Jacob. For many years, I've downloaded diff files from herd testing farms for use with dairy data, and then downloading to other programs, great for cell count analysis. My key question is, will I still be able to obtain a diff file from my herd test centre?
Yes.
Thanks, Erica. So there is, I think it's probably outside the scope of this conversation, but probably in future, Erica, you'll be shifting to a slightly different data format, but that's still quite a way away. And certainly we'll provide updates when that change occurs. But yeah, it's certainly not going to happen in the immediate future, Jacob.
No, you can stay with diff for now.
Awesome. Yep. Great. Thank you for the question, guys. So Erica just sent me a message just as Allison was talking. So Erica's just got a herd here that's got data in the CDR. So I'll hand over to you, Erica.
Okay, so you guys, I assume, can all see my screen. So if we go over to select herd like Allison did before, we click down here, and depending on how many farms you have access to, you'll see those farm IDs within there. So I'm just going to pull up Ellen Banks' herd to have a look at, and we do have permission from them to be able to use this as a demonstration herd. So we click on that, sorry, and then we hit preview, and then you get the spinning wheel for a minute, and then we will get an MFR report. The internet's a bit slow up in Brunswick. And there we go. And there's the report there. So within it, I don't think Allison touched on this, but you can download the report or print it. So if you want to share it, you can do that. And then as well within here, we've got the MFR quick guide and user guide on the page as well. So if you click on them, it brings it up. I think that was it for me. I just thought I'd show you how that functionality worked.
Yeah, that's great, Erica. So what sort of herds are you likely to be able to run directly from the central data repository, Erica?
At the moment, it will predominantly be herd testing herds, but as more on-farm software programs come on board, you should be able to run those as well. But at the moment, it's predominantly herd testing herds.
Awesome. Thanks, Erica. Any other questions from the floor before we wind up? Or comments? Nope, stunned silence. Look, I think that was a really fantastic intro, both Allison and Erica. Certainly, Datavat's relatively new for most of you, but that is and so as I said earlier, Datavat's looked after by Datagene, and Datagene's sort of the key industry body looking after the Australian dairy industry's data, and we'll see more and more tools becoming available on Datavat in future. So Erica, I don't know whether you wanted to talk about the herd platform, herd reporting platform that's in sort of its final stages of development. It probably might be worthwhile just mentioning to these guys, because there will be some comms coming out around that over the next couple of months.
Yeah, not a problem. So we've been working with all of the herd test centres to build one platform for them to turn the existing PDF reports that farmers get as part of herd testing into an online platform. So that will be rolling out in the next couple of months. So you'll definitely hear about that. I'm sure there'll be another webinar on that. And within that, Steph, I think it's worth mentioning to this group that there will also be a selective dry cow tool within that platform as well.
Yeah, that's right. So with your herd testing and clinical mastitis data that's in the CDR, you will be able to generate lists for selective dry cow, and farmers will be able to select the thresholds that they want to, individual cell count thresholds that they want to apply to their herd. So that's a pretty exciting development, which will be really handy. So yeah, well worth getting a login, having a bit of a play with Datavat. There are some tools that you can access online, but certainly once you get your login, you can get access to the fertility focus report, mastitis focus report, and eventually the herd test platform as well for your clients. As I said, any questions, there is the Datavat help desk on the Datavat website. Otherwise, if there's any technical questions around the mastitis focus report, countdown at dairyaustralia.com.au. So huge thank you to everybody for joining us for an hour this evening. Hopefully it's been useful. As Allison said, it is pretty complex to run through a pretty complex report in an hour, but hopefully the user guide and quick guides are set up in a way in which yeah, will enable you to be able to work your way through it, but there's always technical support there. And I'll also make this recording available on the website for future reference, or if you've got colleagues that you would like to point towards this recording. So thanks again. Thank you very much, Erica and Allison, for all your incredibly hard work on getting this happening. And yeah, really excited to bring another industry initiative to you guys in the field. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Steph.
Thanks, guys.
Hopefully see a few of you soon, face to face.